ICU. I can say that without any fear of contradiction, especially in public schools. Imagine history teacher teaching French, English teacher teaching music. I wish I was invited to the panel. 2 teachers, 7 subjects only to receive 17,000. We teach as per the payment. If we can go to the next one, Langhart Bismarck says, that was Langhart Bismarck, but it says, let them discuss and bring limelight for the primary teachers who haven't upgraded due to the hard economic times and awaiting the commission to consider them. Will the policy still be honored and be incorporated? More so to the JSS teachers, will they sign another contract up to 2026 for them to transit to PNP, that is permanent and pensionable? And will the JSS teachers be in NAT or corporate union once employed on permanent and pensionable basis? I don't know if we can have one other feedback. Sami Kiplangat says, let us be realistic. The president cannot just wake up and place students at their bounds. The criteria used was basically from the information given by the same students who are now crying. Politicians are just but looking for forums to propagate lies. Enoch Kipsang says that these bans are just equal to racial discrimination that existed during the colonial era. The bans given an opportunity for someone to choose where he places you to frustrate you and ensure you pay well. Secondly, the bans give an opportunity for generation of false information, corruption and bribery. It should be thrown away. Edwin Jiru says, the big question is, what was the problem with the previous system of help? Of course, Mwebi Makori, just the last one before we jump into the conversation, is Mwebi Makori says those who will be lucky to be placed in band 1, they will finish school with the government loans amounting to at least 800,000 Kenya shillings. I finished school with help loan of around 250,000 and it was hectic paying it. Though, I'm done with that. Gentlemen, I want us to, let's just take one more before we continue the conversation, and if we can go to the next one. Fair enough, it's Mwebi Makori, still the one that I've just read. Gentlemen, before we go, we took that particular break. You are talking about issues of primary education as a sector in itself. But I know each one of you had issues that they wanted to address. I'll give you, okay, just a minute to talk about the issue of, that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, the issue I wanted to mention, and I think it is crucial for us to tell Kenyans,
consolidating of funds.
Consolidation of the funds. The reason as to why the funds have been dispersed within the politician. One is purposely to entice them so that they approve government agendas. And that's why you see when national government constituency fund issues are tabled in parliament, or when the government want to pass through something, parliamentarians gang up regardless of which political wing they belong to, and they will start demanding for the approval or release of that particular fund. And you have seen that quite often, that being done. Secondly, this money that each and every individual or politician will want to carry in his shoulder in the name of providing services to his constituent is purposely meant for enticing voters. And of course, with a lot of barbaric nepotism that happens during campaign, people talk about the amount of money they want to give to individuals or individuals' families so that they are voted in, and the bursaries that they want to claim that they are going to pay, they don't pay from their pocket. Thirdly, when you look at keenly why the government does not want to interfere with this particular arrangement, is the fact that every person has taken the money for his own corruptive deals, where they give out contracts to their outlets and the money comes back to them and they use it for their campaign. So we are encouraging corruption, we are encouraging nepotism, and we are encouraging collapse of education. What do we want in terms of this? I think things have started. When politicians go into podiums and talk about what the Chief Justice has just said, I think as you have seen in their reaction, I think they are still reading from a political script, and they have not learned lessons when our young people went into parliament, purposely because of their lack of performance and because of their failure in the requirements that they are expected to deliver. Secondly, if we put all the resources together, like the Speaker of National Assembly mentioned, we don't need to pay any school fees in any of our institutions. All our universities, colleges, and high schools will be free of service. 100+ billion annually is sufficient enough to service all our educational needs in the country.
Fair enough, Dr. Ari. Mr. Sosion, let's just talk about higher education for a moment, because you're on record, defending this particular model, saying the model in itself is, if well implemented, will help students in the country. There's a genuine concern by the viewer. What was the problem with the old model of funding that needed the changes that we've seen at the moment?
The old model was general. It was not based on the students per capita, and also, of course, the cost of the course, and universities were collapsing and reeling in debts of close to about 60 billion shillings. Lecturers were unpaid. You can still see, as we are seated here, more universities are on strike because of unpaid salaries. We discussed this matter of funding of education, and particularly funding of universities, at the development of the Charter and Manifesto level by the Kenya Kwanza administration. And what the President has proposed as student-based per capita, and which is what the new model is all about, and it is student focused. And but the problem that I have is how the model has been rolled out. The policy is good, but the rollout is poor. It is like CBC. CBC could have been a good idea, but it was rolled out badly. It was bungled, and we fell into the hands of the foreign proponents who brought CBC in this country so that they could destroy public education to promote privatization. So if we don't handle if the funding model is not handled properly, it is going to be another mongrel in the sector that is going to cause confusion. So this is what I propose, and this is a way forward. Briefly, number one, the whole model, because it is in the second year, and what will work here is what we call the mean testing instrument. The tool that was applied this year placed students very wrongly, because you can get the child of a watchman, the child of a maid, the child of a poor teacher placed in band 5. In fact, which fundamentally
23,000 students.
And when you look at the distribution,
23,000 students say they were placed in the wrong bands.
And yes, and when you look at the distribution in band 1, where we expect majority of the students from poor households to be funded almost adequately, is about 10,000. But when the higher education loan tool was applied, which was set aside, and I don't understand why people invaded and set it aside, and you throw out a tool that has worked for 29 years. When it was corrected, it brought the 10,000 to about 20,000, almost doubling. So that the whole problem here is how we are handling. This funding model must be superintended through provisions of Article 10 of the Constitution, that is public participation. I expect it that it goes through proper stakeholder consultation and proper public participation, so that it is not only the vice chancellors giving the recommendation, the lecturers must also have their input, the students must have their input, and once that tool is agreed upon, allow me to conclude, once that tool is agreed upon, then it should be domiciled in the career desk at the school level, so that students are informed. So it is something that is so extensive that it must be subjected to thorough public participation. Once we have a tool that is agreed, then it shall apply.
Fair enough. Coming to you, Kasmo, before I talk to Dr. Ari, the government says it is providing help for students through loans and all that. But there's the concern by students that at the end of the day, they will be overburdened by loans once they complete their studies. Because if you look at probably students who are pursuing medicine, probably in band 5, band 4, they'll end up with a loan of around up to 1 million shillings by the time they complete their studies. So with the current economic crisis that we have, and the tough job market, that the unavailability of jobs in the job market, is the government in a way as well overburdening these students with loans?
Let nobody ever think that the government is not evil, especially a sitting government. And us addressing it at university level sometimes tends to ignore maybe what's happening down here. Remember, I'm of the firm belief that this government, I'll start from the bottom and come up. I'll take maybe 2 minutes, don't worry.
Okay.
That it does not intend to hire JSS teachers. Because remember, the students who are finishing 844 in the last leg, they will have a bunch of high school teachers who they cannot employ. Where will they take them? That's the one, if you think about it down here. A lot of people are saying this CBC would have been a good thing, and which country are we copying it from? Germany is one of the countries we're copying it from. But if you think about how Germany works, if you're a poor person, if you're an immigrant, let nothing ever lie to you that you will ever end up being rich. The poor stay poor. So you'll get in there and you'll get into these artisan technical courses. Now you come up to this level where now we're talking about it in terms of this new funding model. The previous model, which was the differentiated unit cost, yes? It had factored in, and that's why I disagree with Mr. Susion. It had factored in the cost of every course, Okay. Where if we knew that medicine cost 600,000 and my course finance costed, for example, cost 200,000,
Okay.
What it would do is the government would say, we're paying 80% across all the courses. Then what happens is the person studying medicine gets allowance for a higher, qualifies for a higher loan. Then as a person for finance, I qualify for like significantly lower loan. So if I'm getting 60,000 in terms of a loan as a cap, if I'm paying 30,000 a year, a medic will get maybe 200,000. What was the problem with that model? Because now what is happening, we have a very great, remember we have a youth bulge and we have a very, very big unemployment problem. You're setting me up, at least for us, when and remember, as we said, the education, this is a human right. How do we realize these progressive rights? It's by ensuring that we transition. The government cannot create or deny it. If we do this, it is a very deliberate way to keep the poor people poor and preserve education as a preserve of the rich. Because now, I now here agree with Susion here, that because there are interests who have private education, if politicians own private schools, a lot of these politicians own private schools. At some point, public education will fail, and then now people will be forced to get into these private schools. So as I learned, if you think about this thing, it is a proper tool of classism and segregation. And now, previously, when you would pay maybe 500 shillings per family, and remember even in the Universal Act, is it Article 26, and now Constitution is 53, basic elementary and fundamental education should be as a right, should be made freely available and as a lifelong pursuit, where previously in the Kibaki administration, it used to be 500 shillings per family. Now, and if we talk about unemployment, we don't have such a huge burden. Now you're creating it. See how angry we are. You're creating Generation Alpha, or 2 generations coming after us, which will be unemployed with a loan of about $1 million to their name. You will not have a country. So the people who truly want to ban this country are the people who are passing these pro-rich people, anti-poor people concerns. Because if you think about it, in a decade, this country will be unlivable. So the people, they are the true anarchists. This sitting government is the domicile of the true anarchists.
Fair enough. Those are genuine concerns. Dr. Ari, there's the question of, discrimination. Various leaders have, said this particular model is unfair. CJ Martha Koome has talked about it. Martha Karua, Kalonzo himself has said if the model is not amended to ensure that improvements are made on it, he will lead demonstrations against this particular model. Now, question is education becoming a premium good in the country?
I think we are failing in our education system. It is good to understand where we are and where we are heading to. And the reason as to why I put education into a failure is because when you look at what is happening in the education sector, we have politicized our education system to the extent that even giving education to our children has become impossible, and we must have politics attached to it. And a nation that is guided by politicians is doomed to get illiterate, basically, simply because everyone will look at the value attached to politics rather than the value attached to education. And when you look at what is happening and you see the models of funding and the models of, or rather the curriculums of our institutions changing every now and then, there is a crisis. And the crisis is that we have no foundation that we ride on which informs each curriculum or funding models in order to achieve quality education in this country. And therefore, my take in terms of education is that our educationists have failed us because that will have been their responsibility to make sure that anything that does not work within the education sector, as an authority in education, they will have said no to it.
Okay,
but
fair
because they have also taken the drum that politicians beat, and they beat for them because of an individual gain. You know, people are looking at what they gain rather than what the society will be tomorrow.
Okay, fair
and
enough.
therefore, we shouldn't look at education in a manner that will going to be doomed in this country.
Okay,
I heard sometimes back in some other countries where we have thousands of professors in every street. For example, Nigeria, they say if you throw a stone, most likely you'll hit on a professor.
Okay,
but now,
enough.
what does that education tell you? There is a problem.
Okay, fair enough.
There is no quality assurance.
Gentlemen, we're running out of time. I'll start with you, Sosion, even as give us your parting shot. 1 minute each, kindly. Mr. Sosion, the president and the president has talked about university debts, and you've also talked about it. Who audited these debts? Even as give us your parting shots.
The university debts are real, and they were caused by...
Who audited these debts?
Yeah, of course, the Auditor General. The Auditor General's office is an office that audits all public institutions. And you've raised a very fundamental issue.
Yes.
Do we have strong and clear accountability structures in audit of the funds that are dispersed to our education system? No. We don't have, and it is where the president should crack the whip on. In fact, no money should be dispersed to any institution before auditing is done. We must have audit reports of every university and of literally every school and how the money has been used. And I think that is where we need to stop and look at, even as we talk about consolidating resources. If we did that, we will offer absolutely free education in this country. And then let's look at it. Because of these policies that are introduced very hurriedly, and I think it is time we stabilize the sector without introducing new policies. Let us make the policies that are in place work, and then including even the funding model. It will work if it is taken through a thorough process of public participation, and we have a good product that we can see the indicators in terms of banding and placement, that children from poor households are properly funded and they are comfortable. In fact, we have dropped in terms of global competitiveness in Africa from #1, we are now at #7. And if we don't watch out, we'll continue moving downwards. And then, so there is need to crack a whip in the entire education sector and ensure that there are strong accountability structures in place, education is accessible, and we minimize shifting of cost of education to households. Then me ask a simple question. When you allow the vice chancellors to sit and they cook the level of cost of courses in the public universities, and eventually you'll discover the cost of courses in public universities is higher than in private universities. Now, public education in our universities is more expensive than in private.
Fair enough.
See, there is a cost issue, and that is why there is need to retake all these policies afresh through a proper process of public participation.
Fair enough.
Then very lastly,
thank you very much.
The Presidential Working Party report on education
we don't have time, Mr. Sosion. I gave you 1 minute. We're running out of time. Dr. Even as you give us your parting shot, is this a model that was rushed?
Yes, of course, our educationist has already said it. Because if a model has not been subjected to the necessary steps before it is launched, it is a rushed model. And that means then the product is not well cooked. The product is still raw. And you cannot cook a raw product in an implementation stage. It is supposed to be indeed done before even it is introduced. So the introduction of the model has been rushed. Secondly, I think this is the last time I'm going to speak, and therefore there are 3 things that we must put in place.
In 30 seconds, can
Only 3 things. One, we must consolidate resources for education. This money comes from the same coffer. We don't need to give it to individuals to claim that they are providing services to constituent. All these resources should be consolidated and returned back to the exchequer, and then channeled direct to institution. Education must be free. Must be free, and policies that are already in the shelves of the ministry should be implemented before any new policy is introduced.
Fair enough. Kasmul, finally, The president has been keen talking about vice chancellors approving this particular model, saying the model is working. But from where I sit, you see, at the end of the day, vice chancellors are appointees of the government. At the end of the day, some of them, could be, in a way, trying to ensure that, their jobs are safe. They will say whatever the president wants to hear, and probably even if the model is not working in a way, they will be probably, not to say fearful, to address the issue at hand. So what do you make of that? And even as you wind up, what do you have for today?
First of all, today we have a general strike in the country with regards to respect of our constitution. We said that because the constitution is starting at 1400 hours, wherever you are, whatever it is that you're doing, sit back and reflect. You could decide to park on the road, you could decide to pray in the middle of the city center. You are allowed to do all these things. But if you think about the true problem is our political class. A university like Moi University, it should give the president time. Because the thing that killed them was tribalism. The person they kicked out went on to do very well in Daystar. So if this is what you want, because people said they want peace, let Moi University, people who work in Moi University also wait, even the communities. Because if once we overcome that Mtuwetu syndrome, where people just think because we need to have our tribe in place, that's how we're going to sort it out.
Okay.
So that's part of it. But also, again, we will not have this government, because universities are parastatals.
Okay.
Let them, the CEOs bring the numbers, as my elders have said. Let them bring the numbers, and then let those numbers be audited.
Thank you.
Until that happens, we will not stop pursuing
Thank you
these
very
avenues
much.
through public mass action
Thank you
or
very
civil
much.
disobedience until we sort this country.
Thank you very much, Kasmul Makuya, for making time to be with us. Dr. Thank you very much. Sosion, always a pleasure having you around. Of course, that was the conversation surrounding the education sector in the country. And like you said, today they'll be holding a march as we, of course, commemorate 14 years since the Constitution was promulgated. That is the 2010 Kenyan Constitution. Just a reminder is that today President William Ruto will be launching the official bid for Raila Odinga to take over from Musa Faki Mahamat as the chairperson of the African Union Commission. The event will be starting shortly at State House, Nairobi. Now, thank you very much for joining us. See you again next week on Tuesday. Do have a wonderful day, and like always, God bless.